Top of the morning to you, Chris. And the reason why I start that way is because we're in March and the Shamrock Shakes are out at McDonald's, and so I'm craving one right now.
Okay, yes.
Shamrock Shake.
I
Listen,
always.
go
So
ahead. You
can I
always
just? You
jump
just
in.
you triggered me with the Shamrock Shake. So I'm still on the fence. I'm still on the fence as to whether or not I like the Shamrock Shake or the orange one. Was it an orange? Yeah, they did an orange shake for a while. I don't know, like Shamrock's nailed to this time of year. I don't know what the orange one was, and I don't know if it's an orange mint or an orange creamsicle, but they've done that in the past.
No.
Yeah. Sounds good too, eh? Yeah.
I never knew about the orange one.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
They do.
Oh, geez. Now, okay, I got to go back. I can't sidetrack. I want to talk about the orange shake, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
So, top of the morning to you. It's Shamrock Shake time.
Yep.
And we had a great on-ramp. So good that like I'm running out of my special serum for today. So I decided to go green. Major Hulk respect. The red, I was jonesing after the red on Saturdays. I was jumpy. I was feeling like this. And that's not good when I'm not going to work and dealing with 22 8-year-olds.
You can't burn it out of your system, not in the way that you normally would. Yeah.
I shifted to green for today, and wow, this serum is something else because I feel like I was at the top of my game in the on-ramp. So you and I talked about some stuff, and it's awesome to catch up with you. So not only is the on-ramp a great place for us in terms of like setting the stage for what we might talk about on the podcast, but it's also great to catch up with you because this week I felt like I didn't talk to you at all this week. On Twitter, I felt like we were both kind of just passing through. I'd see your stuff, but I wouldn't engage.
Like in the digital hallways.
Kind of, yeah. Like, oh, there's Clough. I see some of his digital pattern down the hall. Yeah, I'm turning right. I'm walking away. There was a little bit of that this week for me. And so the on-ramp, you said something right before we hit start that I want to get to, that I really want to talk about.
Okay.
We were talking about different people we know and their skill sets, what they're really good at, and maybe some things that we're assuming they're not really good at. And then a little bit more framework for that conversation was we were talking about how kind certain people are. They're so kind that they don't have the heavy hitting mentality or attitude that they might need to have navigating the waters that they work in and that they play in. And then you said, what's the Hulk in their philosophy? So where's the heavy hitting? Where's the strength? Where's the maybe the brutal honesty in their philosophy? And the minute you said that, I was like, whoa. Can we stop there for a second? And here's what I want to say about that. I feel like there are too many people right now who may be avoiding the Hulk in their philosophy, the strength and the like back offness, because they want to be part of everything, because they worry that if they're not part of every little new thing that starts, they're going to miss the boat on something that's going to be great. And I personally think that that's when you are open to every single thing and jump on every single thing just because you don't want to miss something big. I feel that's a flaw. I feel that's a problem. Now, people who do that might disagree. I might perceive people doing that, but they may not perceive themselves doing that. And I may be perceived as someone who does that. What's funny about that is I have a bit of a list of the things I've said no to and the things that I've stepped away from. And I've done that for my personal growth, to be able to say, no, these things don't fit with who I am right now, or what I want to be doing right now, or what excites me right now. They don't fit. So I'm going to step away. And if I need something in that area, I'm really proud of the people that are in my PLN that I can go and talk to and say, hey, I need some help here. Can you help me out with this? Or I don't understand this. Can you fill me in? And I would like to think that when they need something, that lives kind of in my realm, that they're more than happy to come my way and engage with me. So what's the Hulk in your philosophy? You and I talked briefly on the on-ramp. You asked me a question and it lit me up. And I'll tell you that there's a lot of Hulk in my philosophy because that's kind of the way I am. It's the lighter side that I need to work on, right? It's those soft skills in certain moments that I need to work on that I know they're not my go-to. My go-to is right to the Hulk. And I temper that all day long, every day. And one more thing that I'll add there to just kind of beef up my argument about myself is the other day on Facebook, something I had posted in like 2013 popped up. And it was a comment I made about having to go to work and to talk to people that I don't want to talk to. And it was just one of those things where it's like, oh, here we go again. Today's a day I got to go. I got to deal with this, not interested in any of it. And it popped up again and I reshared it again because nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. I still feel what I had said in that post. And it's funny because at work, I noticed some of the people that normally talk to me in and day out were like, they're walking past me. They're like, hi, is it me? I'm like, no, it's not you.
Were you talking about me?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, no, it was more of a general statement. It wasn't like this person, that person, that. It's just a general statement that some days I walk in and I just leave me alone in my room with my students and the adults that have to work with me. Just can you let me do it? And then I want to go home. Like, so it was just funny. They're like, hi, is it me? No, it's not you. Come on in. What's up? How are you doing?
Come on in. Yeah. That's
anyway,
awesome.
So what's the Hulk in your philosophy? Thank you for bringing that up. And I would love to hear your position on that. Where's the Hulk in your philosophy, Chris? Because when I don't see you get fired up the same way I get fired up. Maybe you do, and I don't see it because I'm so stuck in my world. I don't know. Tell me.
I like the question. I like I'll go sideways before I go forwards. I remember working the restaurant back in the day. I had my number 2, Maria. Hey, Maria. She's still rocking the restaurant world. So Maria was my number 2. And it took a while for us to figure out what our dance was. So I'm leading the kitchen as a general, front and back of the kitchen. She very much was running the front kitchen, which was where all the food came out of, but we had a prep kitchen as well. And just things kind of shifted around such that like there was a lead in the back kitchen as well, but that didn't work out so well. So Maria was slowly, I always had the sense like I wanted to train her to take my job, like to do my thing, right? So part of what I put to her, I said, you need to learn the back kitchen then. She's a whole field player. Like she had all the different skills, but I said, you want to start picking up the prep and the butchery and all that other stuff in the back, the setup for the day, not just the sending the food out. And she was totally willing to do that. And she started to do that. So she became a far more robust in her skill sets. One of the things that I always appreciated about Maria, and this might be the thing about finding your Hulk in you, is that sometimes the Hulk in you isn't necessarily you, but it's someone that shares your philosophy. And that was part of our on-ramp, is that, you know, in building teams, when you're trying to stay on point or you're trying to keep things focused, it's okay if the person that is imagining the mission is not also the whip. Like they're not the ones that are sort of calling everybody to order and making sure everything stays on task. Sometimes those jobs need to be split up. So I like the question about, and I'm still coming back to it, who's the Hulk in me, but it brings to mind a previous team that I was a part of, that the Hulk in me, or let's say that ability to, I guess I'll call it agency or determination, to be able to say, this is how this is going to be, and I'm going to make it happen. So kind of being in that seat of power. As whether you want to call me the head chef or the kitchen manager, I had that end control. I could just make it happen. But as it goes in groups, is that it's always to distribute that power makes it better, because then other people are also sharing the philosophy and are able to carry the ball if you're not there. So as an individual, I made sure that I shared that space with her, and then she found her way, but somewhere in between, we had a shared philosophy of where the kitchen was going to go. So that just, it brings that to mind, because I think in part of our on-ramp, we were talking about associates, excuse me, associates of ours that are in groups and are not being able to kind of, they're not flourishing with the ideas, because they're starting to realize that it's not just the passion around the idea that's going to drive the team forward towards some sort of conclusion. They actually need somebody in there that's a bit of a hammer, just to kind of say, no, we're off point here. And, you know, if you've been to any staff meeting, and if there's nobody taking minutes and sharing the meeting, then it very quickly kind of can sort of like wobble off kilter. And all of a sudden it's like, you know, what are we even talking about anymore? So as far as my personal Hulk, I've never been, I think I probably fall closer to staying in Hulk mode. I have a harder time being in the banner mode. And coming down off that where I'm not. So it's interesting. You don't see me go off. Sorry, wrong word. You don't see me, let's say, express the Hulk, but I might counter and say what I'm doing right now, I feel like I'm always in Hulk mode. I have a harder time coming down from it and just kind of finding that sort of calm wavelength. So that's an interesting, it's an interesting observation, because I feel like I actually don't unsmash well. I feel like I'm constantly smashing. A colleague of mine who were always cracking jokes off each other, she put a Post-it note on my desk and it said Hurricane Clough. And I've just left it there. So yeah, to your point, for me, it's almost the opposite effect, as how do I not be the hammer, like and still kind of feel like I'm connecting with teams and my colleagues and such. But I find that fascinating that you notice that.
Is that your new name now, Hurricane Clough?
I'm not branding myself. It just brings to mind the Post-it note is still there. It's still there on my desk. So,
what do you mean you're not branding yourself? Come on, man, push it out.
Push it out, Hurricane Clough. Yeah. Yeah.
Watch out, I might do something with that.
Okay, yeah. We'll you know what? We'll keep that on the workbench. Keep that on the workbench for the our public speaking series. Right? Cool. Yeah, the whole DeCodEd. What do we want to call that?
I like the DeCodEd workbench.
DeCodEd workbench?
Yeah, stuff that's kind of there, but we're not doing anything with it, but it's on the radar. It can just sit on the bench.
Have we put anything else on the workbench? Everything is kind of cut. No.
Well, maybe now we will, that we have a workbench.
Okay.
We didn't have one before, so we were juggling everything, but now I feel like there's a bench. Let's just put it there.
The one thing I've always liked to say is, do we call it DeCodEd Labs? I like that. I like that idea of DeCodEd Labs. Like, it's kind of like, because it brings to mind, like, you know, bubbling beakers and flashing lights, and you don't really. Did you ever watch the hilarious House of Frankenstein?
No.
No.
Is that the TV show?
Yeah.
Yes, I never. Oh, don't even get me started on that, because
I didn't know that was going to be a trigger for you.
It's a huge trigger, and now it's on. So I'm bulking up. That show, I have a major issue with that show. Here's the issue: as a kid, one of the things as a kid, I remember waking up on Saturday, Sunday mornings, turning the TV on, and I never knew what was on. So I would always, that show, I loved that show, but I don't think I ever watched an episode from beginning to end, because every time I caught it, it was halfway through or right near the end. But I remember the little, as soon as you said it, I wondered, is that what he's referring to? I didn't even know it was called. But that show with the characters and you'd go into the lab area and you see the bubbling green.
Vincent Price
stuff.
Remember Vincent Price in it? Near the end would always do a little piece of poetry. There was the scientist that would explain, that would do cool. You know what? I'm actually
I need to YouTube it now. I need to watch it. I need to
Totally. And
get
it's
on it.
funny. I've already put too much on the page for our picture for today, like for our sketch note.
Already?
Oh yeah, the hilarious House of Frankenstein.
That's what it's called, eh? I never
Yeah.
used what it's called.
Yeah, the hilarious House of Frankenstein. The Wolfman,
Yes, the Wolfman.
Wolfman DJ. Who else was on there? The
This
Witch.
is my
Do you remember
childhood.
The
I don't-
Witch? I think Billy Van. Billy Van was one of the actors that was on there. Vincent Price. Yeah. Do you remember The Witch that had the cauldron and she's always like flipping her hair around?
I remember.
Yeah. But there's bits. I think for me, it's true. I don't think I ever watched an episode end to end, but I did. You know, you're right. Saturday mornings, I'd sort of click it on. I'm like, what is this show? And then after a while, I realized I was watching the same show. Just every single clip was very, very different. So why did we get to that? Hilarious House of Frankenstein. Oh, the scientist. Just the panning camera coming across, and you see the bubbling beakers, and then just as it sort of comes into focus, DeCodEd Labs. There we go.
I wrote that down. DeCodEd Labs. Okay.
I do have. I want to. You touched. Were you going to throw down on something?
Just I want to say one thing about the Hulk smash video.
Do it.
That I put out yesterday. So again, part of what you and I are doing is trying to put out content. Well, I'm all over the hashtag Hulk Smash EDU, and I'm constantly pushing stuff out about it. It's growing in my mind as a concept that I use with my students to help them with their learning. And yesterday I put out a video, and it's humorous, but it's also serious. It's got a little bit of both, as you and I talked about, but nobody was privy to that discussion. Long story short, there was something that came out of that's not in the video that I talked about with my students. So in talking about choosing the right tools to use for your learning, and when to back off your learning and when to really engage with your learning, that balance, there's also something that can happen when you use the wrong tools. You can learn to become skilled at using the wrong tool for a particular job. And so what I wanted to say, I just wanted to mention that because in the video, you asked me, was it one take?
Yeah.
Me getting the cell phone onto the big hand and manipulating the cell phone. It was one take.
Let me just share that for 1 sec. I didn't, in my question, I should have asked it better. So the one take, as in you only did one take, or as in I wasn't asking, wasn't edited. Just between the two, if anyone's actually listening, because one take can be two different things with videos. Is that one continuous take, as in there's no editing splices in there, or is it you only did it once and you capture and you're like one and done? Go ahead. Sorry.
It was one and done.
One and done.
And it was one continuous video footage piece, whatever you want to call it. But in doing something difficult, I found a recipe. I found a formula. I felt at ease. So even though I couldn't physically operate a mobile device because the hands are so big, so chunked together, I still could pick it up. I still could flip it around. You know what? If I really took the time, I probably could have turned it on. So you can still find success when you're using the wrong tool for the job. But my point is, let's stop and actually think about what we need to do the job. And sometimes the answer is, this is what we need, but that's not what we have. This is what we have, and we're going to make it work. So there's a lot of fluencies going on there. There's like the fluency of knowing or of critically thinking about what you need and then getting it. But there's also the fluency of, well, that's not happening. We're not getting those things. We need to hack this. We need to troubleshoot this now. And this is all we have.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a fluency there. I really appreciate when people can do that, when people can make something work. And I have a little story that I want to share about that, and then we're going to move on. When I was a kid, when I was in grade 7 and 8, I wanted so badly a skateboard, like a really good high-end skateboard. And my parents promised to get me one. And they finally did. And they bought me the skateboard. It was $250 for the whole kit. And it was like, I felt like a king riding that deck. Okay. But there was this kid down the street, and he didn't have a lot of money, and his parents were never really around. And so he was able to scrape up enough money to buy a skateboard from Kmart. And it was, like $35. And nothing about it was good. Like, the deck didn't have a good concave. It was heavy as heck. Like, the wheels were just your typical plastic wheels with really garbage bearings. Like, there was nothing about this deck that screamed legit.
Yeah.
Okay? But he was so determined to be an awesome skater. He put so much time into it that he was better than all of us on Kmart deck. And then when we'd give him our boards to use, he was on fire. Like, we were like, oh my God. We had huge respect for him. You know what I think ended up happening? The older skaters that we kind of would see around, when they were done with their stuff, because they had money, so they would use their stuff for a month and a half, and they get new stuff. They just started giving their old stuff to him. And he was better than they were. And so he didn't have the ability at first to get what he really needed, because he had the talent and he put in the effort, but he would use what he had to make it work. And he was kicking our butts. He made us look like garbage, and we had the best equipment at the time. That happens in a classroom too. Many teachers do that. Many teachers don't have what they like, what they need, but they make it work. And that brings the Hulk out in me, because then people tell you, oh, well, you're making it happen, so I'm not gonna, I don't need to buy you anything. We don't need to get you this stuff. You're like, no, I need that stuff. I'm making do. And then the people that see you make do are like, well, you're making do and you're kicking butt, so we're just gonna leave you alone. It's that conflict, that dichotomy that kills me every time. They want to innovate, and then when you innovate with nothing, they're like, keep doing it. Like, no. Give me stuff. And they're like, no, we're not giving you stuff because you can innovate with what you have. That brings out the Hulk in me. But I'm just gonna simmer down, and we're gonna move on.
The part that kind of, if we're harmonizing like the skateboard and the gear and the tools, I also, wow, you got me thinking. So a bunch of different things. Like, so you and I, at least at one point, have talked about the apprentice journey, where you start, it's a circle, kind of a circle, I guess. I don't know if it's a circle anymore, but the arc goes something like this. In the beginning, you're you don't have the skills, you don't have the tools, you don't have the mindset. You're exposed to a thing that catches your passion. So you slowly gather tools, skills, mindset. And then at some point in the curve, you get a perspective on what you're on the calling or the vocation that you're developing, or just the activity that you're doing, that the skills, the tools, and the mindset are starting to get in your way from actually leveling up. And I've experienced this from the point of view, if I give it an example, working with young chefs, that they have so much going on that they can't focus and refine what it is that they're doing. Like, there's a certain bit of occupational schizophrenia. And, other chefs, in observing this moment, might say that your trade is unfocused. Like, you need to tighten it up here. You have so many things going on here that what you're actually producing is confusing. And this kind of gets to that space where, sure, lifelong learner, but you realize that you're going to hit a stage where it's okay to hit kind of like this nice flat wavelength where you're producing something consistent and successful. And it has to do sometimes with editing your skills and editing your tools and editing your mindset. Resources are in there too. Like, so you're using less to do more. And what I really appreciated about your video is that's the subtext for me. That was the message that I got, is that we do have so many resources that we can potentially use to explore our learning, express our learning, share our learning, but editing that sometimes and pulling back for a second and realizing time and place and context is really important. It also brings to mind some of the work that I do with grade 12s right now in that are exceptional students, so in learning strategies. And there's a belief in some of them that because they have accommodations, that all of their accommodations need to be used all the time. And sometimes they'll hold up their sort of like their laundry list and say, you know what, the teacher's not giving me these things. And I quickly remind them and say, I work this with the students the whole time, regardless of grade 9, 10, 11, or 12. But I bring back to them, I said, your list of accommodations are not all accommodations at all time. It's really important for you to start to understand, well, this comes back to where's the Hulk? Where's the Hulk in your sort of toolkit? It's like what specific tools work specifically with different courses. And you start to see those nuanced spaces, that it's not always the big foam gloves saying, it has to be, it starts to almost be like a tantrum, right? Like it has to be like this in order for me to have success. I mean, part of it is realizing that that list that you might be pounding on, though you have a right to discuss and request it, that they actually don't always work in every context. So, you know, from your video, that's what I was thinking. That's what it reminded me in my context, that the idea that the abundance of tools that we have. So it's not even as much as the discretion of choice, it's the recognition of abundance. And I think I had another conversation with Catherine Tang and Tina Zita this week in our talk on essentialism, and that whole idea of trade-offs in editing, as in making choices to say, no, I'm not going to use that thing. And the suggestion of saying, no, I'm not going to use this thing actually doesn't create a deficit. Sometimes it creates space for other tools to sort of to come to fruition. So I'm happy for you in your video that you were able to send some sort of a text when you were, you know, and it stayed right on the palm so nicely, and you did it in you know, one and done. That's awesome. Someone else trying to replicate that would definitely have to use different tools in order to create that thing. But I think you were definitely in the sweet spot. You used exactly what you needed to get the message out. Like if that's an expression of your learning, you did everything right. You did everything right.
This time. And my kids loved it.
Perfect. This time. And that's the perfect ending to my thought. I appreciate that.
My kids loved it. They enjoyed it, and it really was a moment that hit home. And as I was telling you, I got other footage of my students doing the same thing as myself, working. They were working with some math manipulatives, and I said, hey, put the gloves on, try to get this done. And it was funny. It was enjoyable because they love putting the gloves on. I love that at the very least, they love the prop. You know, it brings a smile to their face. So they put the gloves on and they're trying to work with these cubes and stuff, and they're laughing. They're like, I can't pick anything up. I'm like, I know. Now and the camera was on them the whole time, just recording raw footage. I said, now take them off and get back to work. They take them off, and all of a sudden, there's an appreciation of being able to use their fingertips to manipulate these like minuscule manipulatives and like the fine touch, right, that you don't have with those big gloves on. You don't have that. You get strength and you feel like a beast, like you can bust through anything with those things on. But the minute you take them off, you appreciate what you lose when they're on. And that was my message. Like, you can't use a Chromebook for everything all the time. You need to stop and think about what is your goal? What do you need to get there? And I know you want to use it because it's novel and it's fun. But we can't do that every day, right? Just like as your teacher.
I shouldn't. That's where I think that's the decision to edit and reduce. You can, and you will, if you kind of choose to, right? But shouldn't, I think, is the declaration that's more important to say. I should not use these, because this is again, I bring it back to my kids and learning strats. They can keep asking for these strategies to be accommodations to be included in every single lesson. But they really shouldn't, because part of the learning is without the tools. Part of the learning is without the resources. And then you get some agency and some ability to discriminate in a good way.
Awesome. Thank you. Did you want to hit something today that you were talking to me about yesterday?
Or my messed upness?
Yeah, did you want to go there a little bit in the podcast?
I could go two different ways.
I wanted you to go the way you want to go.
I know. So, okay, so I'll put out the thought, but maybe I'll just put the thought out there. I had a sense this week I'm thinking about failure, thinking about things thinking about failure in two different frames, or realizing two different frames, maybe connecting two different frames and I shouldn't have. Thinking about failure as in personal failures, and then thinking about failure as in where I didn't deliver, or so my failure to somebody else. So I started to think about those two, and that kind of led me to thinking about students that I might have failed in the past. And you and I had, some back and forth. And I think that if someone were listening too quickly, they might have just heard me say that I failed a student, period, and maybe attach that to a mark. I'm gonna grand assumption here, but I think when we talk about failing students, it's that idea that they didn't achieve the mark. I started thinking about failing students as in I didn't deliver. I didn't do the right thing. Maybe I made a mistake. You saved me from myself a little bit, saying, well, maybe, it was information. You might not have known better. You were using the best tools possible. And that kind of pushed back. And I said, but net result is still the same, that the child didn't end up in their sort of optimal condition at the end of their relationship with me. And I don't really have a nice, tidy way to reflect on this, but maybe this is one of those things. It's one of those things within our context and within, yours and my relationship and the way we kind of break things down. This is, I think, going to become a little bit more of my operating system. It's like I need more. I'm just sort of letting you step in partway through my thinking. And it might not be revelatory to anyone out there, people thinking about failing students, but it'd be interesting to me to sort of like connect with other teachers. Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be teachers, but other people that work, let's say, that a concept of failing someone and not being able to help them get to a space that, again, I think of a compassionate relationship. So somehow the things that I did actually didn't lift their burden. It didn't make things easier for them. It didn't sort of lift barriers for them. And there's a million different reasons why that could have been, but that was my state of mind this week. And I'm not quite sure how it came to mind. I can't even say exactly. I don't know how that became part of my thinking. I think part of it is that I'm doing some credit recovery right now at school. So that's the process of working with a student to fulfill the expectations of a course after they've already failed a course. So you kind of sometimes have to reteach things, sometimes you have to help the kid, like you have to schedule meetings. And so it's basically a kid can fix a credit. And working with some students that failed my courses started me thinking about the difference in lingo there, as in failing a course, failing yourself, failing other people. So yeah, that's I don't have it neat and tidy, but I'm pursuing that thinking, as in who have I failed? How did it happen? And how are they doing right now? I think that's the other part that makes it kind of messy. Despite the fact that I used to talk, so my colleague last year, Pam, we would sometimes get frustrated with, so this is back in the context working with students on suspension expulsion, and we would get really kind of like bound up when some of our strategies and tools that we were offering a student just didn't stick. and the kid couldn't turn the corner. Like they just couldn't come out of their behavior or reconnect with positive elements in their life. Like they couldn't become a 2.0 version of themselves, or they didn't choose the language. And we kind of got to a place that we might not be the change in their life that we want to see, but we want to, you still want to maintain that you're the best signpost, most consistent signpost that you can be, that could lead towards whatever you would sort of label as student success. So I've become reflective on that again, and who I've failed in education. Also talking about like if there's anything they would want to say to me about that, like, geez, what would that conversation look like?
One of my favorite things to do, like in my modern day teaching, is when I make a decision with a student that they don't like, I always say something like, I know, like, it's funny, I try to acknowledge their position. I did this more so with the grade 4s and 5s that I taught over the last 3 years, right? Say, I know you really dislike what I'm about to do, but your actions, your behaviors, your attitudes, what you're saying is leading me here.
Mm.
And so what I'm about to do is going to be perceived by you as a roadblock. It's going to ruin your day or whatever, but I'm only responding to you. So it's funny, I say that almost like a way to protect myself, because when I think about the teachers that failed me, not just like academically failed me, but failed me like as a human, I wonder if my actions led them to a place where they had to do what they had to do, right? Because I've never really looked at it that way. I've always looked at it like, this teacher sucked because this is what they did to me. But maybe they did that to me. Whatever decision they made was made based on my actions that precipitated their decision. In some situations, I would say yes, that was the case. And in others, I would just say no, that they were just not nice people to me for whatever reason. So I think about that when I'm working with my students. If I'm being rubbed the wrong way by a student, do I let that influence my decision making? I think what I try to do is I try to tell them, listen, this is how I'm feeling right now because of what I'm seeing or hearing. I'm not doing well with that. So what we need to do is step away from each other for now, because I might make a decision that has nothing to do with your academics. It might just be like a personality thing. And I really wouldn't want that to get in the way of your learning. Whether you like me or not, that's not like up for debate. I'm going to make my decisions based on what I'm seeing. And if that causes you to dislike me, that's going to be okay with me. But it's your learning that I need to kind of consider.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to build in something to say, listen, I'm about to do this because of this, this, and this. If you don't like what I'm going to do, then you have to help me change. Like, you have to help me. I'm going to change what I'm thinking based on what I'm seeing. Can we do this? They either say yes or no or whatever. And sometimes and this is where last year I struggled, where they just say to me, I'm doing it anyway. And I'd say, okay. Okay. And they would do it. And then there'd be the consequence, the discipline. And it weighed heavy on me because it would interfere with the bigger picture. So when I was reading your text last night about what you were disclosing and how you were feeling, I was thinking, dude, unless you were going into a situation purposely looking to sabotage it, then you need to move on and stop feeling the way you do. But that's just my position. And you'd come back with something, and that's the mode I was in. If you were purposely trying to be a jerk to somebody, then yeah, you should feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
But if that was not your intent and you didn't know any better because you didn't have the skills or the perspective years ago that you might have now because of your experience, I get it. I'm in a place where I'm trying to move away from punishing myself or being sad with myself about something that happened. It's like, it happened. What can I learn from it to avoid it next time? Or how can it influenced the way I operate today?
Right.
How has my operating system changed because of it?
Yeah.
And so for me, it would these reflections, it was time for me to go back to primary.
Mm.
You know, it was time for me to go back to the stereotypes and the general way that primary operates in its ecosystem. I wanted that back, and I'm back in it, and I love it. I love it. I'm so tired though. Like I'm tired. Like when I woke up this morning, pumped for the podcast, but
Mm-hmm.
pumped for a break. And yesterday, I had students telling me that they didn't want to go home for a week. They're like, we don't want to be at home for a week. I said, I get it. I said, I understand. You're enjoying yourself here. You like to come here. Hey, that's huge, man. That's like big thumbs up, and has nothing to do with me, I don't think. I think it's just, hey, it makes me happy that the kids want to be at school in my room. But I told them, your teacher's tired. Like I said, Mr. C's tired, and this break is built in for everybody to just go and chill. I think that's why it's there. I have no idea why March break is built in, but I'm taking it, and I'm gonna enjoy this week to just simmer.
Yeah, exactly.
Down, chill out.
I agree. So that's my messy head right now.
Well, you know what, mess. What I was just about to say is let's clean it up, but maybe you don't want to clean it up.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'm ready to yet. The other thing that makes it prevalent for me is that the likelihood that I would run into one of my students and recognize them as a young adult is highly likely, you know, not to sort of shift that perspective too far, but let's say student, if you're working with the littles and let's say you don't necessarily have direct contact with them for another 12 years, there's a longer, the depth of your relationship, I guess it's the depth of your relationship to them as adults might be further off than where I'm at. So working at the high school level, like I've run into students, you know, out at the mall as 22, 23-year-olds. I now work with one of my former students, and it's just brought to light the whole, what would it be like to consistently run into your students when they're no longer your students? What would those conversations look like? And I don't have the small town context where that's highly likely. I wonder how that would change my practice if I knew that I would be teaching in the community very closely with students that I would eventually see as adult workers, as contributors to the community. So those kind of thoughts were running through my head this week. So I'm sure they will continue to. I haven't landed. Like I said, it's my messy head right now.
I'm actually looking forward to seeing what you do this week. Like, seriously, what messages am I going to get from you this week? What directions will our conversations go because of the fact that we don't have to get up and go work with kids this week? How is that going to shift where we're at? Like, and I'll tell you something. Another thing that I woke up to this morning that I was really excited about was, and this is the thing with teachers and the breaks that they get. Some teachers completely turn off. Do what you're going to do. If you need to turn off because it's been one of those years, then turn off. I'm seriously excited about jumping into a professional learning mode for the week. Like, there are things that I want to read. There are things that I want to take and stick into my operating system that I just haven't had. I've not given it the priority. And this week I can do that. I can give it priority. And I'm really looking forward to that. So I won't be marking math work that my students did. And a little tidbit here, I don't like to bring home stuff to mark. I like to assess it with my students while I look at what they're doing and talk to them about it, which I think a lot of people miss the boat on that. They take stuff, they bring it home, they do something with it, but there's no conversation with the kid. Anyway, that's just my twist on it. I can spend my time thinking about where I want to go next with my students' learning, what I need to learn, to help them learn. I'm looking forward to that this week because it's my pace, my time, my interest. I'm looking forward to being a little bit more creative, like letting my creative juices flow. I love that. I love it. Yesterday, well, I just play around with stuff and I send it to you. I'm like, hey, check this out. And it's just fun. It's fun for me. It's my like release. I'm looking forward to that this week. So I hope your messiness, I hope you do what you want to do with it, but I think you're going to have the week to be able to deal with it. And I know you're going to go do some stuff with your family, but it's there. It's just different. My wife said something to me last night. We were going somewhere and she said something. I'm like, hey, we don't have to be anywhere for a week. So like, let's just, and when I said it, it was funny because I could see her kind of come down a bit. Like, yeah, you're right. We don't have to be anywhere. Like we're going away for a couple of days, but even that, we'll get there when we get there. We don't have to be anywhere.
Yeah, it's similar. We have a little bit of that energy too. Dude, do I drop the last thought or do we cut it here?
I say you drop it.
I had was talking with a colleague this week, the principal, Stefano. Good dude, deep thinker, great positive energy. The type of energy that doesn't bowl you over, kind of activates you. Like you kind of want to be in his camp. It's cool stuff. And he's sharing bits of his learning. I think he might be in his second year as a vice principal. So he's been sharing some bits of his learning with me. And he mentioned that he's mind blown. So his context, he's I got to get this right. He's Chilean, French speaking, history teacher, well-traveled, balanced in his interest as far as academia goes, deep reader. And she was sharing with me that he's kind of mind blown how necessary it is for him to understand the geopolitical coloring of the world right now. He says working with families that are coming into the school, registering for school. He said he's had conversations that have turned on the fact that he has an understanding of what's going on in their home country right now, and being able to sort of have conversations about that in the process of getting to know the family. And I feel like that's the counterpoint to some of the things that you've identified as seeing yourself in the classroom, and that being new thinking. We've both talked about the power of trauma in our students and sort of working that through, like working through whatever trauma they're arriving with, trauma that may happen while they're here. You've touched on a little bit about the immigrant story. And I felt like this was it's a chapter in that book. Because I think I was maybe aware of it, but I hadn't connected dots as to the utility of it. And it seems obvious. Like he mentioned it this past week, and I thought, wow, that's a new fluency to be built into your tool as a school leader, is the awareness of what's going on in the world. And some people, I think, do that very well. They're constantly paying attention to that. But I think the niche is you also need to pay attention to what's going on in the world according to the community of learners that you have in front of you. And it's not necessarily something that you can expressly use in your toolkit, but it definitely, I think, raises the possibility of being a compassionate leader in your school, being able to sort of tap into that or know where to look, or to be aware of something that's going on in some space that's at a distance from, Ontario, Canada, somewhere else in the world. Yeah, it was a cool little, I liked hearing the echo of our conversation in his aha moment. I'm like, I totally get that. I appreciated that and had a place to put it in my head. It's kind of stuck with me all week.
Along those lines, along those lines, I want to say that when you don't have to deal with those things, it's weird having to deal with those things. And you know my story.
Mhm.
Things shifted for me really at like a cellular level when I was introduced to a new student in my class who was a Syrian refugee. And I don't know why that shift, I don't know why I was affected so strongly by that shift. Now, I think there's clues like the kid resembled me as a grade 4 student, like his background really fit well with my background in terms of like the language he spoke, where he came from. Like there was just too many similarities, right? There was lots of ways to connect, which was great. I connected, great kid, great kid. And but I before him, there were students that had come from situations that were traumatic, that were from my neck of the woods in the Middle East. And I was not able, there was no shift. And I constantly think about, so in your way of thinking, you failed kids. In my way, it reminds me of the students that I worked with before him that had come from the same part of the world with maybe some of the same like issues or whatever, and maybe I failed them. I don't think I failed this one. I think with him there was something there that really hit me. Well, I've been talking about it since I met the kid. It's still there. It's still impacting me. It's still leading me in a way that I didn't think would happen, that I never imagined would happen. But it is. It's like I said, cellular level, because it's moving me. It's physically moving me and emotionally and mentally moving me in different paths that I never thought I would travel. And so now I can't imagine doing the work I'm doing without that stuff in the mix. I can't imagine it. And I tell people that I work with all the time, before I came to this school, I would see the name of this school and I would think to myself, I'm never going to work there. But now that I work here, I can't imagine working anywhere else. And it was funny because one of the EAs overheard me kind of talking out loud about this. And she said, when people come here, they don't leave. And I said,
Yeah.
yeah, they do. I know lots of people who have left. And she just gave me this look of wisdom, like people never leave here. And I think what she meant at a cellular level, once you come here and you operate here, it will always be a part of you. It will never leave you the way
I
you
don't,
think.
maybe, but I think that would be, I would do a grand assumption on that, because that also suggests that connectivity just happens. And I think this is, if I go back to my sense of failing, I think that's part of the trap, is that my assumption is that just because the kid is around me in my classroom and I'm doing everything that I think I know that should be, pro-social, connection, supportive, compassionate, I think that's where I hit. I'm like, I don't really know. So I don't know. I think that statement can only be ratified by each kid telling you, yes, I feel like I'm connected. Yes, I feel like I'm cared for. Yes, I want to stay here. So, yeah,
I
it's a heavy space to sort of exist in. But these are, it's interesting when you go, and then I'll throw my thing in.
No, I was just gonna say it's really interesting. This is what I've been thinking lately, and I don't know what to do with it. It's really weird. I
That's perfect to say, though. See, that's exactly that. There you go. There's one of the pillars of this project of DeCodEd, is that coming to it and us saying some stuff like, I don't know. I don't know why or how or what. Go, man.
I am a person of color, right? I'm not white. I'm a person of color, and I've spent my whole life watching and learning to be white. whether it was happening purposefully, like whether it was on purpose or whether it was by accident, whatever. I've spent my whole life trying to be white, learning how to teach from a white perspective, I'd argue. Learning how to be from a white perspective, I'd argue. And now I find myself teaching in a school that is predominantly people of color, in a classroom that is majority people of color, trying to honor their cultures and their perspectives, respecting the Canadian culture and the way of Canada. I love it here, and I love that it's a place that I believe is open to people like me. And making sure that in teaching people of color and not stealing their identity, not crushing who they are, where they come from, but honoring that, making sure that I also respect and teach and honor the people in my class who are not people of color. I don't know why it's on my mind, but it's there. And it's there because I think that now I second guess the way I operate. Am I going to do something to somebody or to a group of people that's going to shift them in a way that I'm just shifting because that's the way it's always been done? Or am I shifting in a way that's going to help them become better learners, better citizens, lifelong learners, followers of Christ by doing the right thing for people and for themselves? That's what I'm dealing with. So the other day, we sang happy birthday to a student in the classroom, and my head's like, this sucks. Why are we singing happy birthday in English? Now, I know they're there to learn English. Canada, the main language is English and French. I get it. But then I said to them, well, how do you sing it in your language? And then they get a little embarrassed or whatever. And I said, no problem. Let's find it on YouTube. And so we found it on YouTube, and then we started talking about culture and celebration. All the things I taught my culture and celebration unit in social studies, but this was different. This was like, no, you know what? You are this person. This is who you are. This is where you come from. If you want to hear happy birthday in that language, I'm not going to get in your way. In fact, I don't want to be the one pushing things down your throat that make you feel like you're going to lose your identity or your culture. I know it seems like high level stuff for low level learning and people, but they need to know, like already some of them seem to try to be abandoning who they are. And they're not doing it. They're not doing it because they're like ashamed of, they're doing it because they want to fit in. Mm-hmm. They want to be part of what's happening here. And I'm telling them the beauty of where you are is that you have a teacher like me who's highly sensitive and aware of the environment he's in and the students he's working with. Yesterday, I had a TED-Ed meeting, and as we were talking about some of the students, their ideas about what they want to talk about, I said, look around. You're in a room. Not one person in the room was white. And they all looked at me like, oh my God, like it just hit them. I said, so one girl wants to talk about identity, who she is, where she comes from, and what that's done to her. And I said, look around the room. There's not, at this moment in time, there's not one white person in this room. So I want to hear your story. I want to hear what it is about your Japanese background that has you feeling this way about identity. And it was a moment in time where they literally looked around. They're like, oh my God, there's nobody in this room that's white. There was a Filipino person. There were some Black people. There was a young lady that's Spanish. There was me, Middle Eastern, a couple of other Middle Eastern people. There was not one person in the room. I'm like, what is going on here? What world am I living in? But that's the culture of my school. Those are the people that attend this school. And so every day I go in, I'm 100% aware of that. I'm 100% aware, and there's a comfort there. I feel very comfortable there because I've never had that before. It's just weird. Like, it's weird, and it takes up a lot of my headspace. And I think that's why I'm so tired, because I'm not only going to work trying to teach, but I'm going to work trying to teach, and I'm trying to be as sensitive as I can be to these people, where they come from, what they're about, what they've experienced. You know, when the little guy is acting up in my room who just came in November, I have to remember that he's come from a place, he's lived in a couple of different places because of situations beyond his control, beyond his family's control. And now here they are in a peaceful place, but now their war is dealing with, how do we adjust to this peaceful place? How do we operate here? Like, his mom speaks no English. So when I communicate with mom, it's through an interpreter. And you know, like, if it was just me and mom, if she's not face to face, she's gonna have no clue what I'm talking about. And the kid has better English than his mom, but sometimes the kid does things that are not legit and okay to do here in this culture that he now finds himself in. I'm it's part of my journey, and it's helping awaken who I am deep down, that I've left deep down for a number of different reasons.
You make me think about just how complex it would be. What would the conversations look like at home around, you know, son, daughter, my child, you need to go to school and do this because of the family's perception of what it takes to be competitive, to fit in, to be productive. What I mean by that is you noticing, the teacher in the classroom noticing the diversity and expressing to the kids through action and words that you can be you. And then maybe the child going home and the family saying, sure, you can be you while you're at home, but while you're at school, follow these rules. Sometimes it's the rules of the school. Sometimes it's the perceived rules of engagement from a new Canadian family's point of view. I'm helping out a student right now who wants to take a gap year. A couple months. The student does not want to go right into college, even though they've been accepted into college. Their family's story is such that it can't include a child not ending up in a professional outcome when they finish high school. So this student is really, 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 really feeling isolated from their family because of what they've learned about opportunity in Ontario and Canada, and their families don't see it like they do. And my heart goes out to this kid. I don't understand their cultural context. Sorry, I don't understand. No, wait, how do I do this? I understand the students, the parents' perspective. They want their kid to be successful. What I don't have is the driver in there to then sort of push my own children in the same way. So I can't fully appreciate the motivators that the students' parents have that say, you don't get a gap year. You can't do anything else other than go to school. Keep going to school until you officially are being paid to not go to school anymore. And the student has expressed that this is very much a part of their culture. And they say it's even more emboldened because of the fact that their family is here and not back home in their home country. Like, it's sort of boosted. They have to. And their parents also openly say things like, you have to compete with the white folk. You have to push harder to compete with the white folk, and you have to be more than the white folk. It's not an expression of self as in you do the best that you can do. It's you do the best that you can do in excess of what your competition is. And your competition are the white kids around you. I only share this because the student has shared this. I have no broad context of this being a common story, but it is this student's story. And it really is it puts to mind or puts attention in there about how we talk about the awesomeness that Canada is and how that story is parsed apart at home. The student has asked, will you talk to my parents? I said, sure. So we're in negotiations right now as to what that could even look like. I'll update you as it comes through. But yeah, that's one of the sort of challenging conversations that I'm in right now.
Dude, that certainly was the case for me growing up. So I remember getting the message from my dad that my dad really pushed the Canadian narrative on me. My dad did not like it when I would tell him that people said to me, would tell me I'm not Canadian or whatever. My dad was like, you're Canadian. I came to this country and you were born here. You are a Canadian. There's no debating that. Like, so my dad, to his credit, would push that on me. He'd be like, you be like them in terms of like, you go after it. You do what they're doing. Yeah, you go after it. Get it done. Do it. You are a Canadian. I remember that narrative being pushed on me. And I'm proud. Don't get me wrong. Like at no point do I feel like that being put on me has caused me difficulty or that I regret that. No way. I love being a Canadian, and I'm really proud to say I'm Canadian. I'm also really proud of my heritage, though, where I've come from, where my parents are from, especially these days where I'm working, what I'm doing, because these kids look at me, they're like, you don't look like everybody else here. Where do you come from? You know? And I always joke and say, I come from Ottawa. And then they're really confused, right?
That's good.
But when you've got like kids looking at you and being like, hey, you look like me, but you work here? Like you have authority here? I'm like, yes, I do. And that leads me to what I want to talk about before we let this go is compliance. And the tweets I've been seeing lately from the edu leaders on this nonsense of, and I call it nonsense for a major reason, where they're like, do you go to work and do you make kids comply, or do you get them to think and get them to do their own thing? There's compliance. There's a place for it. Okay. I'm sorry to say that to any edu leaders or edu thinkers who are, like not wanting kids to comply for the sake of compliance. We need to have kids comply sometimes. And it's not always like, you must do this because I told you to do this. I've got new kids in my school, in my classroom from other countries where sometimes they need to comply for safety. You need to do this and you need to follow my instructions here, because if you don't, there could be a situation that could lead to a lot of difficulty for everybody. So compliance is important. And I think there's a fine line. Like, so I will tell a student if they're acting a certain way, I would like to think I would talk to them, have a conversation, say, what you're doing there, that doesn't work. I can't do what I need to get done while you're doing that. So let's talk about why you're doing that. Are you nervous? Is it because you don't understand what's happening? And I find when I go there and I build the relationship with the kid, I have better results. And then when I hear about some of the trauma they've experienced, then I give them more rope. So again, it's about like understanding, it's about empathy, it's about education, it's about connection and relationship. So like when I see these tweets now about compliance, I'm like, go away, go somewhere else. If I don't spend my day making sure every kid in my class follows every rule I've created, that's not why I'm there. Now, maybe there are people that do that. Maybe there are, but there is a place for compliance. We can't have anarchy. You can't have anarchy. I don't care who you are or what you teach. At some point, you're going to have to set some parameters for the students you work with and they are going to need to comply with those parameters, just like I need to comply with the parameters that my administrators place on me. I might not like them, and some things I just do because they're the rule, and if I don't do it, it's going to be a lot more trouble than it's worth. So I do it and I comply. And there are other times where I don't comply, but there's a really good reason, and I'd like to think that I have a relationship with my current administrators where I could say to them, listen, I didn't do this, and this is why I didn't do it. And I can then live with the consequences of that non-compliance, right? Because I'm an adult and I figure what I'm going to do, where I'm going to go, and how I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but this business of like, are you getting kids to simply comply? Sometimes it's necessary.
That's true.
In my opinion. And I don't know where these people are coming from or why. I think they're just putting it out there because it's hot stuff. But if I go to class on next Monday and I don't expect any of my kids to comply with some of the things I need them to do or the way I need them to behave and act, it's going to be chaos, and I'm not living there.
I agree. Totally agree.
Have we come to the end?
Dude, we covered a lot of ground. Did you check the pic I sent you?
I heard it go off.
I also love how, what can sometimes make this real life. If anybody watches the video feed, how I had to get up and kind of shift and check something. And I think a former version of me would have blacked out the camera or whatever. But I got a text from my wife asking, do we need toilet paper or paper towel? She's at Costco. So I had to check the stash on one of the shelves behind me here. So that's life. That's life.
The awesome thing about it is, as soon as I saw you turn your head, and I'm like, okay, he's in another realm. He's dealing with a kid.
Yeah.
Something's going on. And I'm like, so what I did was I just pretended you were still there looking at the camera. Because I could have done the, Chris, are you there? Is everything okay?
It happens.
Of course it happens. But you and I have this thing, and it's like, I'm just going to keep going with my thought. I'm going to pretend you're still listening to me, even though your head's somewhere else. When you took off the headgear and you walked away, I was like, okay, Roland, don't let that stop you. Just keep going.
It's the keep it going, keep it going, keep it going, keep it going.
Well, I remember the one time where I shut off my camera.
Yeah.
And you just kept going, but I know after you told me, you were like, I don't know what was going on, how long you're going to be gone when you're coming back, but it's all good. Like like you said, that's life. That's how it goes. We could edit it out, but we're not going to because we don't have time for that. That's not true. I have time to edit out whatever I want on this podcast.
We don't want to.
We don't want to.
We don't want to. And part of it is, it's so just circling back to that whole tools and what you need and self-editing and the sort of apprenticeship. The other, I think this DeCodEd is an expression of what we've learned about podcasting. There's an element of this that we are still delivering on what is probably a vital part of the actual podcasting path that we're on, is the ability to just stay in a conversation, except when you have to get up to check to see if you have toilet paper or paper towel. But it's that ability to just say, this is a form. This is a podcast form, and we may be breaking new ground with it. Maybe other people do it like this. It's funny. I've actually come across a few podcasts now that have a real kind of either stream of consciousness or almost non sequitur entry into them. Like there's no nice and tidy, hey, welcome to the DeCodEd podcast. Like the conversation starts like you've walked into a room. And I kind of dig that flavor, kind of listening to someone's podcast is in, you've arrived in their space and you're invited to just listen. And I know, I think that's what we do with each other every week. And it's funny, I just had a moment now wondering if I'd even turn my mic on after I turned it off.
You're good. And I went to respond to that and I hit the wrong button. I think you're right. I think we're just in a place where we're doing what we're doing, and we're okay with what we're doing. If we're not, we'll shift. And like it's again, it's funny as you say that. I'm thinking to myself, we're in the right headspace for what we're doing right now. We're in the
Mhm.
right headspace for what we're doing right now. It doesn't matter to us what's happening around us. We are hip deep in I don't know how many podcast episodes that we've done together. We're hip
Jeez.
deep in all the new stuff we're doing. Like
This is episode 25. So
two.
what's
Sorry.
that? Season 2. Yeah, it's season 2, episode 25. And I think I'd have to go back and check. Like, I think we got to at least somewhere around 50 episodes, maybe just under 50 episodes last year.
Something like that.
Yep. So
I just think that we're doing what works for us. And I think in doing that, we've created a template for a way to operate a podcast if people wish to go down this road. But again, for me, the beauty is in the fluency, right?
yes.
So when we both started podcasting, we both followed somebody else's template. We used what we liked and what worked. And now I think we've established our own template of how a podcast can operate. And
I like that.
I feel like it was a new fluency and now it's not. Now it's old hat. And who knows? Like, be you and be aware. And I think when you do those two things, just know what you're doing. What are you doing? What you're doing for? Like, are we doing this podcast for someone else? I'm not. I don't think you are. I mean, I think we do what works for us. I love that we brought the whole YouTube thing in because for my professional growth, it has led me down a path that is like I never thought I'd be. Yesterday when I was editing the video that I made around the leadership and innovation initiative that I've sunk myself into, I was like really enjoying the process. I was really enjoying the fact that I'm doing stuff at work. It has a purpose. I'm capturing it in video, both my thoughts talking to the camera, but also footage of it happening as I talk about it. And there's real power there for me. Like I feel like in the 3 videos I've made about my journey of innovation and leadership connected the way that they are, I'm like I just keep growing into a different place as a teacher. And I'm really loving that. I'm digging it. And I'm digging now. If somebody were to ask me about it, I just say, watch the videos and then talk to me because it's all there. It's all there. I would have never done that 2 years ago. I could tell you I would be scared. I'm still scared. I don't know why. I think it's because what I'm doing I feel like it's permanent. And it's funny too, because I'm getting used to talking to the camera and not editing out the parts that I don't like about myself when I see it again. It's like, this is just who I am. So be you, take the risk if you feel like it's going to take you to the next level. And I love what we do on Saturday mornings and sometimes Sunday mornings.
Be you more often. Just be you more often. It's tough.
I think that's the title for this week's episode. Be you
more often. Yep.
Okay, dude. Great talking to you again.
Absolutely.
And we'll be in touch. I like your drawing for this week.
It's a hot mess, but it's got some layers to it.
Can I ask one question before I let you go? The parts in here that look like they're foreign languages, They are. Are they actually, like, did you take that from somewhere online? Can I ask you what it says? Like, does it all say DeCodEd? Does it all say podcast? Is it the same word in different languages?
It's all decoded, baby.
All decoded all the time.
Yeah.
I love it.
Can you see the Greek? I'll say, I don't know if it's Greek or Macedonia. I think it's Greek. Look how long that is to say decoded. It's the third one down. It's an entire row. I would love to know how to say that. I'm gonna figure it out. I got to hear how that one is.
You were able to mentally focus on all that stuff while talking to me about the stuff we were doing. That's amazing.
Thank you.
My head's done because my drink is gone. So I'm like, I'm
Me too.
right now.
I'm done. I'm pointing it at the screen. I'm done as well. That's it.
Hey, by the way, yesterday was our brewmaster's birthday.
Oh, happy birthday. That's awesome.
Yeah, I saw it on Facebook. I'm like, what's hilarious is every time I see her post or I see like she's in another country, she took the year off to go and do like educational work in another country with her family. So every time I see it, I just laugh. I'm like the brewmaster.
The brewmaster. Kombucha master.
And we have no money because we've not generated any funds from any of the books that we haven't written yet.
You know, the great thing is we have no debt.
That's true too. Yeah, we don't.
So I think we're break even. That's what that's called. And if you could be break even 2 years into an adventure, that's pretty good. We're at a break even point. We've made some pretty savvy financial decisions to keep this, net neutral. DeCodEd podcast project, net neutral. You be you more often. Oh, see, there we go. We're getting into our.
There's another slogan.
There's another slogan. All right, man.
Have a good one.
Start your break.
Yeah, you too.
Now.